faces, right in the face. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaratari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaratari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaratari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai. Gonitai ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 62, text 22 and 23 and 24. So 22 is the one we'll chant together. Sachatam Sundaravaram Vilokya Muditananam Dushprekshe Svagrihe Pumbi Reme Pradumnina Samam Sachatam Sundaravaram Vilokya Muditananam Dushprekshe Svagrihe Pumbi Rame Prajumina Shamam Sachatam Sundaravaram Vilokya Muditananam Dushprekshe Svagrihe Pumbi Reme Prajumnina Shamam. Please chant. Sachatam Sundaravaram Vilokya Muditananam Dushprekshe Svagrihe Pumbi Reme Prajumnina Sharamam. Sachatam Sundaravaram Vilokya Muditananam Dushprekshe Svagrihe Pumbi Reme Prajumnina Sharamam. And the word for word, sa, she, cha, and tam, him, Sundaravaram, the most beautiful man, Vilokya, beholding, mudita, joyful, nana, her face, dishprikshe, which was not to be seen, sva, in her own, grihe, quarters, pumbihi, by men, reme, She enjoyed Pradyumnina Shamam together with the son of Pradyumna. And the translation for text 22 is as follows. When Usha beheld him, the most beautiful of men, her face lit up with joy. She took the son of Pradyumna to her private quarters, which men were forbidden even to see, and there enjoyed with him. And then texts 23 and 24. Pararjas Shragantha Dupa Dipasana Dibihi Pana Bojana Bhakshyascha Bhakyai Shushnushana Chitaha Guda Tanyas Pure Shashvat Pravridha Snehaya Taya Nahar Ganan Sabubudhe Usaya Pahe Tindrindriya. And the translation for 23 and 24 is as follows. Usha worshipped Aniruddha with faithful service, offering him priceless garments along with garlands, fragrances, incense, lamps, sitting places, and so on. She also offered him beverages, all types of food, and sweet words. As he thus remained hidden in the young lady's quarters, Aniruddha did not notice the passing of the days, for his senses were captivated by Usha, whose affection for him ever increased. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shahe Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Ancha Kalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Ram Padaswami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prasharine Navishesha Sunyavadi Pashtatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So no BBT purport for these 2 or 3 verses. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur does comment on text 22, saying that the phrase is, quote, forbidden even to see, duspreksha, actually means that Usha's quarters were impossible for other men to enter. So there's an explanation given by Srila Prabhupada in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where he says this is Srila Prabhupada writing, the palace in which Usha and Chitralekha lived was so well fortified that it was impossible for any male to enter or see inside. So there appears to be some inconsistency due to the fact that even though the palace is so well fortified that no male could enter, there is a male present in Usha's quarters. This is what we're reading in text 22. So generally, inconsistency is asserting something, one point, but then denying it through another point. So we're hearing that the quarters are so well fortified that no male could enter, but yet we're reading there's a male present in Usha's quarters. So the description is that Usha took the son of Predumia to her private quarters. So that was text 22. So to reconcile this inconsistency, one has to consider how it is that the son of Predumia came to be inside the palace. Srila Prabhupada writes, and again this is from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this is Srila Prabhupada writing, Chitralekha was a great mystic yogini, and as soon as Usha identified the picture, so just an aside, this having been drawn for Usha to be able to identify her desired husband who had appeared in her dream. So carrying on with Srila Prabhupada, Chitralekha could immediately understand that it was of Aniruddha, a grandson of Krishna's. Although neither she nor Usha had previously known his name or even seen him. That very night, she traveled in outer space and within a very short time reached the city of Dwarka, which was well protected by Lord Krishna. She entered the palace and found Aniruddha sleeping in his bedroom on a very opulent bed. Chitralekha, by her mystic power, immediately brought Aniruddha in that sleeping condition to the city of Sonitapura so that Usha might see her desired husband. Usha immediately bloomed in happiness and began to enjoy the company of Aniruddha with great satisfaction. So that's Srila Prabhupada writing. So this ability of Chitralekha to draw as someone she had never seen before rests on a description given to her by Usha. And this was the description Usha gave to her of the person who'd appeared in her dream. So Usha's talking, my dear friend, in my dream I saw a nice young man who is very, very beautiful. His complexion is swarthy, his eyes are just like lotus petals, and he is dressed in yellow garments. His arms are very long, and his general bodily features are so pleasing that any young girl would be attracted. So that was the description given by Usha to Chitralekha. And again, this comes from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Chitralekha proceeded to draw very accurate pictures of various demigods, Gandharvas, Siddhas, Charanas, Panagas, Daityas, Vidyaharas, Yakshas, and humans. So she's covering the 3 planetary systems. So Gandharvas, so just to look at some of these categories that she's focusing on. So Gandharvas and Charanas are recorded as playing musical instruments, all kinds for the pleasure of Arjuna in the court of Lord Indra when Arjuna is visiting. And this is found in Mahabharata, and I looked at the version by Krishna Dharma. So groups, this is how Krishna Dharma describes it, so just to get an insight of who the Gandharvas are. Groups of Gandharvas headed by Turnbaru sang hymns in voices that entirely captivated the mind. So that's some description of the Gandharvas. And Srila Prabhupada defines this group. He says, Gandharvas, who are residents of Gandharva Loka, are celebrated as celestial singers. Whenever singing is needed in the celestial planets, the Gandharvas are invited to sing. The Gandharvas can sing continuously for days. So, this this is interesting. So they particularly identified through their musical instruments and their extraordinary voices and that capacity to continuously sing. And now looking at the Daityas, and this is interesting because Chitralekha is drawing pictures not only of extraordinary celestial beings, but she's also drawing pictures of a demoniac being. So she actually, because one should not forget that Usha is the daughter of Banasura, and here it is. She's looking at the Daityas. She's drawing the Daityas. So these are actually described as being atheists, the sons of Diti. And interestingly enough, of course, we know a particular personality that was born in that category that was somewhat different. And Krishna says, and this is Bhagavad Gita 10:30, he says, among the Daityas, I'm the devoted Prahlad. Among subduers, I'm Time. Among beasts, I'm the lion. And among birds, I'm Garuda. So there's a description in Mahabharata of the Daityas. And they have a kingdom called Hiranyapura that even the demigods could not conquer. So they're extremely powerful beings. And Mahabharata, there's a description where Arjuna is describing a battle that ensues between him and the Daityas. So it's just him and his charioteer and the Daityas. So this is how he describes his interaction with these beings, so one gets some insight. I'm just looking at some categories of personalities that Chitralekha was drawing, and just pointing to the fact that she did not only draw pictures of celestial beings that were on the, should one say, in the mode of goodness, but also those that were atheistic. So here is Arjuna describing the Daityas and his interaction with them. As we approached the city, the demons charged out in a body, thinking that Indra had come to fight. Without a second's delay, they rained weapons upon me: arrows, maces, swords, axes, darts, and lances. I countered their attack with mighty volleys of shafts from Gandiva, and Matali, that's his charioteer, drove with such skill that the Daityas were bewildered and fell upon one another in their attempts to attack me. Realizing that I was a formidable enemy, the Daityas retreated into their city, which then began to move about in all directions. So here's something of their particular capacities. Sometimes the entire city is shifting. Sometimes it appeared in the sky and then in the ocean, and sometimes it disappeared altogether. Then it suddenly reappeared in front of me, shot upwards, making curving motions through the air. So an entire city, they have the capacity to move the entire city. Although I found it difficult to follow its movements, I managed to check its progress with straight, coursing arrows inspired by mantras. I released so many shafts that the city was torn to pieces and fell to the ground in flames. So this is Arjuna. The Daityas rose into the sky and continued to fight. Matali brought us down to earth, and I was immediately hemmed in by 50,000 chariots. I fought them with celestial weapons, but the powerful Daityas gradually repelled my missiles. The Daityas stood before me, encased in brilliant golden armor, wearing helmets and celestial garlands, and with chariots decorated with rows of flags. So that's some elaboration on this category of personalities that Chitralekha is also drawing, the Daityas. Also mentioned is the fact that the name Chitralekha indicates a person skilled in the art of drawing. So she actually, it's mentioned, makes excellent. Chitra means excellent or variegated, and Lekha means the art of drawing or painting. So that came from a purport earlier on in the 16th verse. So the identifying of Aniruddha by Chitralekha, even though neither she nor Usha had previously known his name or seen him, is attributed to her being a great mystic yogini. So she's actually able to very accurately show the features, the particular garb, weapons of particular personalities. But the fact that she can actually identify the personality that she's drawn is attributed to her being a great mystic yogini. So the powers attained by mystic yogis is explained by Srila Prabhupada. So this is Srila Prabhupada, his explanation of these kind of mystic capacities. The mystic perfection achieved by successful yogis is 8 in number. Anima siddhi refers to the power by which one can become so small that one can enter a stone. So Srila Prabhupada comments that scientific improvements allow one to enter stone. I mean, I found myself sometimes marveling when I'm going along the subway and I think, gosh, imagine actually there was this capacity to burrow through all this earth and create these super long tunnels that a whole heavy machine can move through. So, so you could say that, in the Srila Prabhupada, because he likes to always contrast modern scientific capacity with, I guess, yogic abilities. So he points out that scientific improvements have allowed one to enter stone through excavation. Now, another yogic siddhi is that of becoming so light that one can float in the air or water. And again, this art has been achieved by material scientists because we regularly observe planes flying in the air, or if you happen to be sitting on the banks of the Lake Michigan, you can see many persons in their motorboats plowing through the water. So there's that capacity also to fly in the air and move on the surface of the water and even travel under the water. But it is actually a yogic siddhi that one can become so light that one can float in the air or in the water, or float in the water or fly in the air. And that particular siddhi is Lagima siddhi. So in the same way that kind of movement through the air or through the water, because one's physical being becomes so light, also allows one to enter the sun planet because one can actually utilize the rays of the sun to travel to the sun planet. And similarly, a yogi can touch the moon with his finger. So, when you look in the modern context, there's the capacity of scientists to build spaceships that go to the moon. But it's pretty difficult. You have rockets backfiring and portions, it's designs that a certain portion has to detach because it can't actually deal with the pull of gravity, etc. But for a mystic yogi, one of the perfections is like literally being able to touch the moon with the finger. So this siddhi is called Praptasiddhi, I think. Sorry, my computer changed it. Or acquisition, you're acquiring something. And in a similar way, this acquisition siddhi allows the yogi even to say if there's a request, I'd like a pomegranate from a particular garden in a particular distant place, the yogi can actually acquire that pomegranate literally and have it right here in no time at all, thousands of miles away if he likes. So apart from that yogic perfection of acquisition, there's the yogic city of Ishita, where simply by will, a yogi can destroy an entire planet. And another perfection is called Vashita, which means that one can bring about one can control anyone. So this is a kind of hypnotism that is irresistible. So it's a yogic perfection, bringing someone under control. And by this particular power, one can achieve anything he likes just through utilizing this yogic perfection of hypnotism. And Srila Prabhupada actually says that that's the particular yogic perfection that gets misused a great deal. So you hear of yogis who induce people to act in particular ways, and generally it's to collect a lot of money and then they disappear. So that's that mystic perfection using hypnotism. Prakamya. And then that same capacity, prakamya, achieving anything one likes, sometimes it's used to control a material element. So a yogi may have water entering the eye, and then at his will he'll have the same water exiting. So like, stream exiting. So these are different, 8 of them, different mystic perfections. But the highest perfection is called Karmavasai. And this permits one to contradict nature. In other words, to do the impossible. So that's that particular one. So, of course, one can derive great happiness from having any of these mystic perfections. But Chitralekha, she's actually trying to bring happiness to her friend Usha. So she utilizes the mystic perfection of Laghima Siddhi, because it's that one of making the body so light that you can travel through the airways. And there's a description that she traveled by the mystic skyway. There's a mystic skyway. And she comes to Dwarka city. So that's given in the 20th text of the same chapter. And she herself tells Usha, I can understand your bereavement, because Usha was expressing that the person in her dreams had disappeared. And I assure you that if this boy is within these 3 worlds, the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems, I must find him for your satisfaction. If you can identify him from your dream, I shall bring you peace of mind. Now let me draw some pictures for you. Inspect them, and as soon as you find the picture of your desired husband, let me know. It doesn't matter where he is. I know the art of bringing him here. So as soon as you identify him, I shall immediately arrange for it. So we get Chitralekha herself expressing to Usha this particular capacity that she has. It didn't matter where he was, upper, middle, lower planetary system, she would actually know how to bring him to Usha. So there's this description that's given. She entered the palace and found Aniruddha sleeping in his bedroom on a very opulent bed. Chitralekha, by her mystic power, immediately brought Aniruddha in that sleeping condition to the city of Sanitapura, so that Usha might see her desired husband. So that's given by Srila Prabhupada. So she had that capacity to enter the palace quite easily. So there was that city where one can very easily enter any material substance. The first city, which was what is the name of that city? Anima City. So she also utilized that. So she's actually able to enter or go like a material obstruction of a wall, etc., a fortress. It presents no impediment to a yogic with mystic perfection with this anima siddhi. So clearly Chitralekha is in possession of that. And not only can she herself go through those material obstructions, but she's actually able to take a sleeping, living entity and exit. So clearly it's a yogic perfection, the anima siddhi, and then her lagama siddhi of being able to travel through the mystic skyways, becoming so light. So these were all, I'm going into this in detail because of the emphasis put by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in text 22 that the fortification of the palace where Usha and Chitralekha lived did not allow for any male person to enter. But here we're hearing that actually Aniruddha is taken by Usha to a quarters. So that's why I'm going into this elaborate examination of how it is that it was possible to actually enter the palace. Now, there follows the description, so this is the next two texts, of the relationship between Usha and Aniruddha. So again, I'm going to draw from Srila Prabhupada writing in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where he describes something of the relationship between Usha and Aniruddha. So this is Srila Prabhupada. Usha and Aniruddha lived together in the palace, and day after day, Usha's love for Aniruddha grew 4 times upon 4. Usha pleased Aniruddha with valuable garments, flowers, garlands, scents, and incense. By his bedside sitting place were other paraphernalia for residential purposes, nice drinks such as milk and sherbet, and nice eatables which could be chewed and swallowed. Above all, she pleased him with sweet words and very obliging service. Usha worshipped Aniruddha as if he were the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By her excellent service, Usha made Aniruddha forget all other things and was able to draw his attention and love to her without deviation. In such an atmosphere of love and service, Aniruddha practically forgot himself and could not recall how many days he had been away from his real home. So that's Srila Prabhupada writing of how that relationship between husband and wife, it was described yesterday by Subal, drawing from the Harivamsa, that a marriage had taken place. And so this was that living together in the palace, which Srila Prabhupada puts it that way. They lived together. Now, because there's mention of the fact that Usha, in her relationship with Aniruddha, was dealing with him and worshipping him as though he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can consider for a moment what it means to actually worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in that setting, it's a conjugal relationship, a husband and wife. But worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is considered the highest type of religious performance. And the perfection one achieves from performing that, of worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is that one achieves love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we're hearing about Usha through her serving Aniruddha in all these incredible ways, that her own love for him increased just by performing service for him. And that's a similar idea, that the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it allows one to achieve love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this kind of relationship between a person and God is defined as bhakti, or offering transcendental loving service. So it transcends ordinary, mundane kind of actions. It's not on an ordinary plane if one is attempting to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's called bhakti. So one renders service in the same way that a wife may render service to a husband, for instance, or a mother to her child. And here, Usha's service to Aniruddha is compared to service being offered to the Supreme Lord. And Srila Prabhupada explains that this kind of rendering of service, it's going on everywhere. Like everyone is serving someone. There's the service mood that we all carry. And the highest perfection of service. So everybody, one reads that persons may serve in a company for many years, and then the reward that comes is perhaps some special watch, a gold watch at the end of 30 years of service, or perhaps some plaque. I don't know, but so this would be called the perfection of their service. They achieved the prime recognition for their many years of service. But the highest perfection of service is when one just learns to serve the Supreme Lord. So you're not waiting for that kind of recognition, but you're just learning how to serve. So that's actually considered perfection, going through the process of learning to serve the Supreme Lord. And that's called bhakti. So the transcendental loving service, it has to have two characteristics. It has to be without any motive, so there can't be a motive if one wants to learn to serve the Supreme Lord. And it also can't be interrupted, so one has to keep it up continuously. And the reason those two characteristics have to be present, that there isn't a motive while one's trying to learn to serve the Supreme Lord, and why one makes sure that it's continuous, is that in that way, one actually satisfies oneself. So generally, in performing material service, there's looking for some kind of reward, possibly some recognition, but one isn't satisfied until one gets that recognition. But in the case of learning to serve the Supreme Lord, the satisfaction is there just by virtue of the fact that one doesn't have a motive other than trying to serve. So very interesting. And generally this unmotivated aspect, not having a motive, it's usually compared to serving a child, or a mother serving a child. That's the closest, like on the material level, because from a child you're not looking for recognition for your service, you're just happily doing it. So the main point is and this is Srila Prabhupada, that one wants to unite with God qualitatively, because we have the same qualities as God. So there is a loving nature, and one wants to unite with the loving nature of the Supreme Lord. So the difference, however, is that some of the qualities that we have, and there may be qualities that persons have, like they may have beauty or fame or renunciation or knowledge, and God has those same qualities. So you may be connecting with the knowledge of God, or you may be connecting with the beauty of God, or you may be connecting with the fame of God, but always there's an understanding that where one has those qualities, they're very small in comparison to the magnitude of those qualities that are present in God or Lord Krishna. So this kind of service mood that will allow one to see Krishna. So, one will actually be able to understand who Krishna is, actually see him. And we see that it's very similar in the case of Usha, and that's why the comparison is made. She's offering excellent edibles, beautiful garments, beautiful flowers, and this is allowing her to actually see Aniruddha better, because it means that she's understanding more of his qualities, and so her love increases. So the service mood in terms of Krishna is one has to be equipped with a certain understanding. And that understanding is, and this is what allows for not having that kind of motive waiting for the recognition, is just thinking, I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. So that capacity to see Krishna is assisted by him. He assists one to allow one to be able to see him and allow one to be able to grow in one's love for him. Um, and Krishna puts it this way: to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And that verse is Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tesham satata yuktanam, bhajatam priti purvakam, dadami buddhi yogam tam, yene mam upayanti te. So the serving of the Supreme Lord is performing yoga or mystic activities. So it means one's using intelligence, hence the term Buddhi Yoga. So this process, this mystic process, takes one out of all the difficulties in the material world, because one's functioning on a different plane of existence, and one moves in the direction of loving Krishna, seeing Krishna in consciousness of him. One's actually constantly conscious of him, and in the direction of constantly rendering service to him. So this is the complete yoga, which brings one to the perfectional stage of life. That's how Srila Prabhupada puts it. So we've heard about the yogic siddhis that are kind of perfection of a certain kind, where you're going past the obstruction of material impediments or constraints. But the proper complete yoga is actually this rendering of service to Krishna, because it brings one to a stage of perfection. And the perfection is that love for Krishna. So the idea is that one is always engaged in consciousness of Krishna, and with love and devotion, one renders all kinds of service or work. So these were some thoughts on these three verses, trying to make a connection based on the comparisons made by Srila Prabhupada and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's emphasis. So if there's any thought on the subject matter.
The subject matter of something that you brought up, um, in which Usha is worshiping and serving Aniruddha in the mood of worshiping the personality of Godhead, or with that type of comparison. And in general, you hear that the wife should serve the husband as, the husband will be like your, on on that level of worship, similar. So, and sometimes you hear that being talked a bit lightly, and in some way of, yes, the position of the woman is to worship the man or the husband, like that, subservient. Uh, One thing that is highlighted in this um, um, pastime is Usha's extreme happiness and the affection and the love that impels her to actually serve Aniruddha in that way. So the part that often when we talk about these sort of Vedic principles in relationships, is that is not necessarily um, brought forward is the element of love and affection that is just natural, that you want to make, you have the desire to make, to bring happiness to the person that you're connected with, that you have a relationship. So, and it's not a one-way thing, but it's a mutual thing. So, so it's not necessarily out of a, how would you say, a dry type of duty that you're obliged to do that because that is the rule, but rather is something that is a natural, uh, something that is just natural there. That when you perform service, you perform the service because it comes from your heart too. And that's the real, that's how you can come to that position of unmotivated and uninterrupted. When there's actually genuine affection and love, which is translated as bhakti. Um, so when we come down into the relationships that are there, husband and wife, or mother and child, or student and teacher, etc., those things, those relationships have to be based on that type of affection, and it have to be mutual, um, because that affectionate service, sincere, that comes from the heart, will generate equal type of response just naturally. So, in general, when in an immature way, this type of um, um, how you say examples or Vedic principles, that yes, the woman should serve the husband, and that's the the woman's duty, and the husband accept the service because that's the husband's duty. Well, the part that we have to highlight is that they have to be a genuine mutual affection, that the husband will serve the wife will serve the husband, etc., etc., like that. So you have to, that element have to be there.
Uh, yes, so you were highlighting the necessity for taking a principle that may be expressed, and it may merely sound like a dutiful principle that applies to a relationship, a conjugal relationship, husband and wife, and the necessity to take into account that there the serving has to be accompanied with an emotion of love and affection. And it's that love and affection that permits even the serving of someone, and allows the relationship to grow, one can say. So thank you, yes, that you brought that up, because it certainly is uh, made very explicit in the description of the service rendered by Usha and the effect upon her and the effect upon Aniruddha. Like in terms of herself, Aniruddha had come to her quarters, and so the marriage and the living together was taking place in those quarters. So one takes it, he's not leaving, so she's the one bringing the objects, the garments, the incense, the beautiful drinks, the edibles. But the effect on her, because she has that right motive, as you put it, coming from the heart, is that it's actually increasing her love for him. So the service, her serving, is increasing her love. So, and on the case of Aniruddha, one hears that, um, and I should just say one more thing about that love that Usha is experiencing towards Aniruddha by virtue of performing the service is also that she's getting an understanding of Aniruddha and his qualities. Because that comes with service, one gets more insight into the person, how the person's responding, and how the person is reciprocating or showing affection himself. So, in the case of Aniruddha, he's so pleased with the service that he's even forgetting, which day it is. So, there's obviously a deep acceptance, both of Usha's actions, her attempts to serve, and also an acceptance and understanding of her, that he's absorbing himself in that service being performed by her. So indeed, it's actually the component that's essential in a relationship, like through doing philosophy for children. There's I recall one particular uh, it's an attempt to allow children to think about what it is that it means to show love or affection. So different questions are asked to bring it home. So there may be a scenario is painted. Um, I've had, so John has a girlfriend, Sue, and they've been together for many years, but they don't really care for each other. But John dutifully tries to show affection. So then, the question is, well, what do you think of that affection? So, can you just dutifully show affection? So, based on what you were saying, you painted the picture that it's not a matter of, that would be more like serving, but without the heart. So the heart component is the part that's been emphasized in this pastime, as you pointed out. So thank you very much for giving your thoughts. Would you like to say something? Well, thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.